Okay, everybody, I think we're going to get started even though we are approximately 3 minutes early, but that was a crazy long break. So it is wonderful to see you this morning. In case you were curious, it is technically still morning. You've been here a long time. So we're very thankful you're here with us in Arlington. My name is Britton Cunningham Merritt, and I'm the VP of Marketing at the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce. So if you want to know anything about Arlington, we're happy to answer your questions afterwards. There's some amazing things happening here, but that's not why you're in this room. We have two fantastic panelists that I'm going to have introduce themselves because we're marketing people, and marketing people, we have our own brand, we have our own story. Now we also like to talk. So we're going to do abridged versions so we get everybody in the room aware of who you guys are. And then after that, we're going to take some polling of the audience, of y'all, so that when we answer our questions, we kind of know who we're talking to and what kind of businesses you guys represent. So we're going to kick it off with my friend Beth Owens. She is the owner and founder of BrandEra Inc. And tell us about your marketing journey in 2 minutes.
All right. Hi, everybody. So glad to see you. I'm Beth Owens, and as Britton said, I'm the co-founder of BrandEra. We are a boutique marketing firm. That's code word for lean, mean, fighting machine. We've got a small but very nimble staff, and we give a voice to brands, places, services, and products. And it's about storytelling to diverse audiences and adding energy to the conversation about whatever we're representing. We work with a number of different communities, nonprofits, local businesses, and we kind of meet them where they are and then take them to the next level. So I'm excited to be here today and answer questions.
And next on our panel, we have the wonderful doctor, right? Dr. Elten Briggs. He is the department chair for the marketing department at the University of Texas at Arlington. Tell us your story.
Very nice to meet you. I did my doctorate at the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner, for anyone. Okay. I never know exactly what reaction I'm going to get when I throw that out there, but I joined the University of Texas at Arlington back in 2006, before I was working at the University of Texas Arlington, and before I started my doctorate, I worked for a company called Altel Information Systems in Arkansas. The company's now defunct. At the time I came out, you guys remember Y2K? So I was one of those guys they hired to fix all the code for Y2K. I did an undergraduate in marketing and math, but there was great opportunity because all this code needed fixing. At that time, I kind of got into the thing that I loved the most while doing that job was talking to clients about and learning more about how the bank valued its customers and managed relationships with its customers. And so I decided to accept the call to get back into marketing, and it's been a great journey for me. I am now the chair of the department there at UT Arlington. We have about 20 faculty members. I've taught courses in intro marketing, services marketing, retailing, consumer behavior, multicultural marketing, and maybe some others I'm forgetting, to undergraduates, masters, and doctoral. So long time teaching at UTA, and it's a great place to be.
Okay, well, those are our two panelists. We're very excited they're here with us today. But we're here to talk to you about marketing. I know on the thing it says what's hot in marketing, but there's some evergreen things in marketing we need to also talk about. But for us to talk to you, we would like to know you a little bit better. So we have 5 questions for all of you out there, and just raise your hand. We would appreciate your interaction. You know, marketing, we love engagement. So how many of you are currently working for a business or own a business that is 5 or less years old? 60 to 70%, thank you very much. How many of you are specifically only focused on business to business? Okay, how many business to consumer? Okay. How many just both? It's all the people. Okay, there we go. How many of you have 10 or less full-time employees? Okay, the government defines a small business as 500 or less employees, but we just had a gut feeling that it was maybe a smaller number. Okay, my last question is, please be honest, because this genuinely helps us. How many of you sit at home and do all your own marketing, or it's like your daughter or your nephew that you're like, hey, at 3 a.m.? Genuine, who does that? Who does all their stuff? Okay, how many of you have somebody that helps you, but it's more of a part-time thing? Okay, how many has a full-time person? Okay, so most of us, we're either doing it all or there's a little help along the way. Okay, everybody agree with that? Okay, so with that said, I'm going to start with a key question on my end. I'm going to pick on Beth first, but I know Elton's going to jump in. We all know what's hot in marketing school, TikTok and artificial intelligence, and there's a bunch of stuff. But the fundamentals of marketing are really important for a business. Having an actual brand, having a real website, something that's the face of your company, those are very important things. So Beth, why is it important to invest either resources or time into those fundamentals?
So think of your brand as your name, right? It's like it's introducing yourself to the community, and not just name alone. It's the personality, it's the heart and soul. So if you don't well define your brand, it's hard for people to know what you do and what you offer. So I think it's really important that you spend time on not just outlining the features of your company, but defining what are the benefits. How are you going to make your customer's life better? Why does it matter to your customer? And like if you can focus on those things and articulate those things in a well-designed website that has some easy-to-read copy that explains what you have to offer and what your business proposition is and how you're going to serve them, that's really important. Oftentimes I feel like small businesses get really bogged down and they've got to be on every social media platform, they've got to be answering it 24/7, and quite honestly, that will just, you will end up burning yourself out on that. You got to do higher level things to establish yourself in the marketplace, and then you can build out from there.
Elton, I'd love to hear you chime in on the fundamentals.
Yeah, so when we think about the fundamentals of brand, brand for a lot of companies is their most valuable asset. And so it's very important to cultivate this. Two drivers of the value of a brand are, one, how well is that brand name known? And two, as Beth was kind of getting out, what does that brand name mean? And so if you have a brand that's meaningful in terms of the messaging, and it's the more that brand name gets well known, then that brand name itself starts creating value for yourself, where you can really see a big difference. Where if you have the same product or service and I had no brand, and then I stick your brand name on it, if it has value, it's going to add it's going to add a price premium that the customer is willing to pay for. Another way to look at brand is a promise. Once you have developed that messaging, it becomes a promise to your customers because the brand has messaging attached to it. Once it's well known, what does the brand name stand for? People come to expect certain things. And so you want to make sure that you're as Beth was kind of talking about, that those needs match, because that is the promise that you're going to be seeking to fulfill out in the marketplace.
And to piggyback on that, one of the things you want to think about too is what's your brand voice? Is it educational? Is it informative? Is it casual? Is it professional? Is it approachable? I like to put human attributes on a brand so I can feel it, and it should be authentic. You know, your favorite pair of blue jeans that you just go back to time and time again, a brand should fit you perfectly. And defining that voice so you know how how you speak to people in everything you do, whether it's the written word, it's a radio commercial, it's copy on a website, it guides you so you're not schizophrenic. You're not presenting all your different personalities at once.
So here's another audience poll. Help me out. How many of you actually sell a real, physical, buy this tangible product? So like almost none of you. You are selling a service. You are selling something you have to explain or have a video of, or maybe you're just selling yourself. Like if I'm gonna pick on someone I know, if you're in IT, that's a hard thing to be like, you're buying this. So you have to sell you. You have to be somebody that you trust. So when you're building that brand, what they've told you is incredibly important because you have to explain to people why they should trust you and use your service. Because it's not like, I'm selling an iPhone, it's this object, come hold it. You're selling mosquito spraying in your backyard or an IT service. So please keep that in mind. One thing Beth said I'm going to piggyback on is target market. DFW, where we all live, the North Texas area, Michael said it this morning, 7.6 million people. We are one of the most diverse metropolitan areas in the United States. Your target market can't be everybody. We are incredibly diverse, and you know what your product is. So, Elten, why is it so important to define who you are talking to?
Well, your marketing really starts with the understanding of who that market is. And however you define that, there's a lot of different ways you can define your target market. For some of you, it may be more location-based, where you're drawing customers from a specific geographic area, or maybe you have the type of service that is not so tied to a location where people will come from a little bit further around because of its uniqueness and the type of service that you're offering. But everything with marketing really starts there. When you're defining, your value proposition to customers, that value proposition differs depending on how you define and describe that target market. So if you haven't started off with that target market and a clear definition of that target market, your entire marketing communications may be a little bit off because you're speaking to the wrong people.
So let's just talk about target market and what we really mean by that. So it can be things like age, income, location, characteristics. Is it a single? Is it a family? Is it a family with children under a certain age? What interests do those individuals have? Are they adventure-oriented, outdoorsy, studious? I mean, there's just so many different attributes. But the more that you can slice it and dice it, the more that you can target. And why does that matter? Because we have tools now where we can speak to a very niche audience. And I think that's super important because advertising can be very expensive. If you're trying to market to all, you don't have the budget for it. Small business has to be very nimble, and you have to do more with less. So clearly defining who your customer is the first step.
So I'm going to go into some trends because we know that's the title, right? I mentioned AI earlier. So artificial intelligence is the thing everybody's talking about. Well, I can go to this and it can generate a logo, or I can talk to this robot and it will write a thing. Artificial intelligence is beautiful, but it is meant to be partnered with human competence. So when you're coaching, Beth, when you're coaching the small businesses that you work with, how do you encourage them to use these tools to help them, but to not become de facto only to what those tools say?
Well, I think, with any kind of technology, it's designed to enhance and accelerate, right? And there are some people in my industry, they're like, oh no, AI is going to put copywriters out of business. Quite honestly, I don't think so at all. I think it's a tool. It's just like we went from typewriters to computers. We went from regular phones to smartphones. We just speed up the pace of business. But you still have to be the lens. You still have to have the heart and soul of your business, and you have to have the idea of what client am I speaking to. Yes, you can write in all kinds of different voices, whether it is casual or academic or groovy or formal. I mean, there's all kinds of different iterations, but at the end of the day, don't just hit publish. Please read over that content and put your spin on it, put your thumbprint on it. That's really important.
Yeah, I think when you look at AI, you're looking at efficiency. It can help you be more efficient in what you're doing. Even creative tasks can help you be more efficient, gives you a starting point. Oftentimes, if you're creatively stuck, it can help you with brainstorming and generating ideas and those sorts of things. But at the UTA, we're trying to figure out how to incorporate this. This is going to be a big part of our curriculum in terms of our business communication curriculum with students and whatnot. But it's going to be a tool. And if you don't have the core understanding, it's going to be a tool you're not going to be able to use as effectively as you want to.
So a lot of all of this AI stuff is digital, and we know a lot of small businesses, to use Beth words, to make a little bit go very far is digital online presence, because it's more of a time thing than a money thing unless you are buying advertising. However, you cannot be all things to all people. And sometimes we get sucked into the concept, like Beth said, I got to be on every social media platform. I should be making TikTok videos. I should be doing this. How can the small businesses here, just even if they share this with their friends, how can they define their online presence to where it doesn't become a 24/7 hustle?
So I think you have to figure out what your commitment is going to be. Like, are you going to publish on a schedule? And I encourage clients to do that, or we write on their behalf. I think if you don't have structure to what you're doing, it starts, I don't know, eating your lunch, where you're like, oh, I need to post something. I need to do something. And I find that oftentimes clients will get into a cycle where they're like beholden to it, rather than I'm going to figure out in my Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and my Tuesday, Thursday, and I'm going to set aside this amount of time a day. It's part of your business day. It is not your business day. You can fill your time with just kind of being beholden to social media. And quite honestly, I would argue that most of the products and services represented here, you're not making all your sales because you wrote one clever post. Okay, we got to cover some other ground. So just be mindful of that. Now, depending on the age bracket of the folks that are around you, like I've got staff who's much younger than me, and like, oh, did you just see this? I'm like, no, I do not live my entire life with my smartphone right there. Because quite honestly, I can tell based on communication style, age brackets of people. I'm old school. I like to write. I actually like to send mail and put a stamp on it. And I've had to train interns about how you put the address on the envelope. And I'm like, did mama not teach you how to write a thank you note? Just saying. So I do think you need to be mindful that there's all kinds of different communication channels, and don't just live in one lane.
At UT Arlington, we teach the course that we offer in social media has become our most popular elective. We teach about 500 students a year that go through that class in social media, either through the spring or fall or summer. And so sometimes you need a little help. We do have students, encourage them to do internships. Most of the time, you're going to have better luck if they're paid internships. And something along those lines. Not as many students are attracted to the unpaid, from what I see in the student audience. But something like that, if services like Beth are above and beyond you, just a little bit of guidance, a little bit of direction, a little bit of help can be very useful.
So one of the things, pivoting away from that, because Beth talked about being personal with writing thank you notes. But being personal is so much more than just a thank you note. It's an amazing thing. But your business becoming part of the community that it is in is imperative to the success of small business. We saw during the pandemic, the businesses that had really put time and effort into their community were the ones that people were driving 25 miles just to go get to-go food because they wanted to make sure their favorite restaurant that always donated to the T-ball team stayed open. So I'm going to talk to both of you about this, but tell me why, Elten, I know that in your time at UTA, you've actually done like quantifiable study on why it's important for businesses to invest in local communities. So tell us about what you found in that study.
Okay, so one of the research studies that we did looked at different community engagement strategies, or I did a couple of studies on this. One, we found that yes, community engagement makes a difference. Social participation, being a part of the community, socialization, being a place that other community members can connect. If it's a retail space, for example, increased loyalty, willingness to pay on the side of consumers. There is a benefit to be seen as a community partner. Another study that we did talked about two different engagement strategies as partnership and philanthropy. You can be engaged by one, partnering with community groups. Another way you can be engaged is by donating and contributing to community groups. And so we wanted to see how those affected consumer responses. And so we found that when businesses partnered with community groups, it increased consumers' identification with the retailer. They felt like they were their increased level of oneness, which is going to make it a little bit harder for them to leave the organization. If you're just is this just a transactional exchange where I'm just paying money and you're providing me something, that's one thing. But if I look at you as a friend, someone that is truly on my team, it's going to be a little bit harder. So the connections are going to be a little tighter when you have these community partnerships. We found that philanthropy affects actually purchase satisfaction. People, other things being equal, when we received a product or service, were more satisfied when they knew that a business was also contributing. It's a source of value for them. That's what that means. That when you're satisfied, or when you're satisfied, that means that what you got met or exceeded your expectations. And so one way to do that is providing additional value. And they found that the contributions of businesses, community, was a real source of value that helped their satisfaction.
Beth, you are on the ground in this every day with the small businesses you work with in this entire community. How have you seen the businesses you're with every day be successful because they've built lasting community relationships?
Well, I think, being upfront and personal with your clients is important. It's an investment in time, but I think when I watch, full disclosure, one of my clients is the town of Pantego. So we're the voice for Shop Pantego, which is kind of an outward-facing campaign to represent the small businesses in a 1 mile square that's surrounded by Dow Worthington Gardens in Arlington. And one of the things that I like is when I go and shop in this community, I walk in and people call me by name. Those of you who've ever watched Cheers, it's that experience. It is very much a small town surrounded by this very large city, right? But it's so nice. You walk in and, people are going to greet you. They may anticipate your needs. Oh, she always orders this coffee. Oh, she's coming in for that birthday present she forgot, or whatever. And I think, to his point, when you were talking about people will drive further, spend more, absolutely. I can give you dozens of anecdotes. I'll give you just one. We've done work for Downtown Arlington Management Corporation, and we had an item that we were going to give away at a luncheon, and a vendor came up short on kind of this party favor on the day of the event. So I had a bit of a problem. So I called Anything Goes, which is a boutique in Pantego, and I said, will you open up your store early? I need to buy something. She's like, I'll meet you at the store in 15 minutes. Okay, that's a relationship, right? She bailed me out. I was able to provide for my client the party favor on every table, even though someone that I had contracted, didn't materialize. Client never knew the difference. Anything Goes got a nice sale, and I tell that story many times. So everybody won in that equation. So I think where you can, again, create those very personal relationships, it makes a difference. I'll give you one more example in Pantego. The Runner, which is a technical running store, it was family owned. It was my first job when I was 15. I'm far beyond 15 now. I've never purchased a pair of tennis shoes anywhere but the Runner, because I'm loyal to the idea that I was taught entrepreneurship by the Zetnick family, and I saw what hard work and commitment to the community I think they've been a long-running chamber member, maybe like 40-something years. And so I was an impressionable 15-year-old, and I've carried that forward. So those are just some examples, but I think that personal relationship is at the top of, there's all kinds of opportunities to engage in your community through whether it's volunteer work. I probably choose that more than just writing a check, although writing a check is important too. But I enjoy the opportunity to meet them, and work alongside them. And I can give you dozens of examples of where I've had that opportunity, and then fast forward, they became clients. Why did they become clients? Because they got to know me as an individual, my work ethic, my style, those things, in kind of a safe place. And then they're like, well, I finally have this need, or I'm finally willing to put budget to it. Oh, I'm going to call Beth. I really want to see what BrandEra can do for me. You can do that too.
So one of the things they've both mentioned is that personal touch. Now, I know some of you, I can see in your eyes, like, are you kidding? Like, I'm so tired. I'm out in the field constantly. There's so much I have going on in my business. I hear you, I see you, but like, it's difficult to get out there. This isn't limited to just going up and shaking everybody's hand you meet. Beth and I were talking before the panel, and when one of your customers posts on your Facebook page, don't just like it. Write a comment, engage with them, build your community, even if it has to be online. It's imperative to let people know as a small business that you care about their personal success, because then they'll care about you and your success. I've also talked a lot, sorry. So, are there any questions you guys would like to ask? Because we could talk all day, but I know that you guys have small businesses. If it's like really specific, we might ask you to talk to us afterwards, but are there some broad questions or things you have questions about trends? We have a mic up here. Or do you just want to keep going? Anybody? Kelly.
If you have two different facets of your business with two different target markets, is it better to keep them under one brand and just tailor communication differently, keep everything the same, or even separate out completely with different DBAs, different branding, websites, social accounts?
I'm going to chime in on this. If you guys, we know Kelly, she's a lovely lady. They own a woodworking shop that makes custom furniture using trees from the community. So if you have a tree that falls in your house, they partner with the tree removal company. So you can buy just plain wood from them, or you can buy custom furniture, just to give context to our panel.
Okay. When I talk about this situation with my classes, I use a lot. I try to get them to think a little bit about Toyota, right? And so think about a company like Toyota, one of the most valuable brand names in the world. A lot of sub-brands, Camry, Corolla, all of these are tied under the Toyota halo. Why are they tied under the Toyota halo? Because the Toyota brand name, if I were to say Toyota, what does it mean to you guys? Reliability. What else? Affordability, right? And so these are traits that are common, or they would love to transfer to those sub-brands. And so they kind of keep them all under the Toyota halo. Lexus, still made by the same company, totally different branding. When I say Lexus, what does it mean to you?
Luxury.
Luxury. You don't think about affordability quite as much, right? And those basic traits. Yeah. And so made by the same company. And so Toyota decided to create two different brands in that case, because there would actually be confusion. If I can extend my brand, that's always going to be the most efficient strategy. I've got money tied up into that brand. I don't have to support two brand names. It's always going to be more efficient. However, is that messaging going to confuse consumers? Or are there core traits? Or are there clearly different traits that would support building a different brand? And so it's hard to say, but I would say you have to think about what your messaging is.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would have to concur entirely. I think it has to do the value proposition. Like, if you are going to have distinctly different price points, that's a driver and of how you're going to segment things. So I don't think that there's a pat answer on this for sure, but I think it has to do a lot with kind of your target audience and the cost associated with acquiring that product or service.
Hi, Clarence.
I wanted to quickly chime in on that. I believe the statement was, did you state that it was separate? They're doing separate things in its entirety? Yes. Reason why I say that is because when it comes to SEO, it makes all the difference to separate them as two separate individuals, because you're going to bring your SEO score down by having two separate products advertising on the same platform. So in my humble opinion, I think it's best to have those two separated, because you're going to jack up your Google thing. You don't want to do that. And I do like the thing that Discount Tire does. Discount Tire does a great job at going to something, specifically identifying their audience. And when I try to think that way. Be that Discount Tire instead of that Walmart. I don't know if I had a question or not.
Clarence, everybody. Dale, do you have a question?
No, just a follow-up. Are you trying to separate wholesale from retail? No. Okay. That's a different story, too.
Question. Do we have a question? Okay.
So for those of us that aren't as keen to all the social media apps, what are the most impactful apps that we absolutely need to be on?
That is a great question, and it depends, I would say, on your target market.
It totally depends on if it's, if it's a professional service, I'd say for sure be on LinkedIn, but it depends on what audience you're trying to reach. Oftentimes people will have a Facebook presence for a business because it allows for employee engagement and community and the community culture, that type of thing. But LinkedIn is, where I go to consume like business content and sometimes lead generation, but kind of the warm fuzzy I find on other platforms. So I don't think you can't declare it without knowing your product or service.
Yeah, and I would agree that, the core ones, Facebook, Instagram, you might think about LinkedIn for business to business. I would say just start with the core, and if there are some nuances where, again, depending on your bandwidth, how many are you able to support, depending on the number of people, you kind of have to weigh that again. So I wouldn't say, not to speak on any specific ones, it's not this social media course is not one that I teach, so I won't get way too far into that. Let Britton have the rest.
I will say on that, just to give my own answer, is I think of each social media as like a high school stereotype. And sometimes you just got to hang out with the jocks. So Facebook is really a good place to start because it gives you fundamentals. And a lot of small businesses start with building a website as their Facebook page. I wouldn't do that on a personal level. You can use Wix or Squarespace. Build a website, please. Don't use Google Docs. Build a website. But start with the people the LinkedIn, the Instagram, the Facebook. Twitter is much more about consuming instant content. So unless you are literally in the PR, marketing, business, or politics, I wouldn't bother. Unless you want to be Wendy's or Oreo, and which I don't think any of the brands in here are quite there, I would not stress about things like that. Any additional questions? Anybody? Oh, yes, we've got one back here. Excuse me, I am so sorry.
As far as joining like the Chamber of Commerce, would you say join more than one?
I mean, I think that has to do with your bandwidth to go. I'm a member of the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce, but my office is in Fort Worth. But there's just a finite number of meetings that I can go to. So I went all in on the Greater Arlington Chamber of Commerce, and then I've had the opportunity to serve on different committees and meet lots of great people. I think I would caution spreading yourself so thin. I mean, some people are members of 3 different chambers, and if you're always going to meetings, like when do you do the thing? I mean, because you have to actually go do the thing, whatever it is. So, but I think if you have some depth in one of them, that's when it really gets good.
Nice.
I will chime in on that and say that being a chamber member is like having a gym membership, except if you went to the gym, your name is on the wall that says you hang out there. So you get out of a chamber membership what you put in it. So if you entirely do sales and you're the face of your company and you have people that do the services or the product, you could potentially pull off 2 or 3. But like the chamber members I know by name here is because they're very engaged and they've built relationships at almost all of our chamber meetings. We start with, how many people have done business with another chamber member in this room? And 100% of the people raise their hands. So when you become a face that people know and recognize, chambers end up being a core of the business community wherever your chamber is. And your local chamber will help you in a lot of ways with connections to other people and building relationships. And maybe you've established something and then you go to another chamber because you built that relationship over a few years. But just like if you want to get something out of going to the gym, you have to physically go. Any additional questions? Oh, yes, ma'am. On my way.
If you're a small business owner and you're needing services that you can hire out, is there a place to where you can get resources or freelancers or agencies that can help market your company?
The audience is saying fiber. Upwork, I believe, is a Mark Cuban one that he invested in on Shark Tank. Any additionals? I think he could say this too, but your local university, there's UTD, TCU, SMU, UNT, the lovely UTA, they all have specific programs for internships. So if you're willing to take somebody and kind of teach them your brand, because it takes a little while for that to be absorbed, they are a much more cost-effective way than freelancers. But Upwork, Fiverr are huge for the freelancer department. Or Beth says Thumbtack. Another thing, again, I am extremely biased as an actual staff member of a chamber, but you can meet a lot of people that do these things in your community and will work with you. So they actually own small businesses in your community that will help you and do limited work that way. So you don't necessarily have to bring a brand person that you don't know that works across the country from Upwork, but they're in your community and know who you're targeting. And even if you may not be wanting to join a chamber because you don't have the time to invest yet, check your chamber's directory, because they have tons of people that they join a chamber because they're invested locally that you can go find even if you're not a member. Yes, sir.
What are your recommendations for content creation for social media? I have a lot of people that come in and tell us they can post and do all that type of work, but they get pretty stale when it comes to creating content that you're actually going to post. Do you have any recommendations on that?
Like when we're hired to do social media on behalf of a client, the first thing that we do is actually a plan, because we have to know the brand for whom we're writing. And then we figure out a cadence of, one part social, one part self-promotion, educational, relationship-oriented thing, community engagement, affinity days, like, oh, it's National Ice Cream Day, and then relatable things, customer appreciation, client promotion, where, you talk about work anniversaries or new hires or that kind of thing. But there's all kinds of kind of content hooks to develop, and I think it's an incumbent upon the service provider that you work with that they identify, like, who are you trying to reach, and that they consume, not only what you've done in the past, but your competitors. I like to look at like a channel and go, okay, here's this company and they provide XYZ service, and here's best practices within this space, and here's the unique selling proposition of the client, and how do we thread that over multiple posts. And then it's pairing it with interesting graphics, great photography, occasional videos, going on site. You can't always predict when a particular post is going to go on fire and really get a lot of engagement, but there are predictors. There are certain practices that will enhance the game.
I think knowing your audience really comes in here because whatever you post, whatever content you create, you want it to be a natural fit with the interests of your customer base. And I've seen, so two things, and the other thing is developing a consistent voice. I know you think about, folks like Wendy's on their social media, they have a very distinctive, clear voice in terms of who they are, and that now people know what to expect, kind of in a sense, when they go there for content and to be entertained or whatever it may be. So understanding, kind of creating that voice, figuring out what's best for you, and part of this depends on your capabilities in a sense and who you have, but also making sure it's relevant for your customer base.
One thing I'd say I've seen people be successful in social media is they get caught up that they have to create the content. Yeah. So I don't know what your business does, but even if you have a very unsexy service, I'm going to use mosquito spraying again because it's something that I desperately need as someone who is allergic to them, but no one's like, ooh, this is fun. But if you can provide a non-impactful discount that's not going to change your bottom line too much, but people will provide social media content if they can get 5% or 10% off, depending on how extravagant the cost of the item is. So if they'll film somebody spraying in their yard and say, look how cool this is, or give you permission to film, hey, we've got our roofers here, we did this whole thing in 5 days, or take pictures of day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, and you pay a bonus to your guy on the team that actually makes sure those photos get taken, and you get permission from the client. Take your Google reviews, take your Yelp reviews, use Canva, type out the sentence you think is the best and post it. You can use content people have given you. You don't have to constantly recreate the wheel. You don't need to do every challenge. I don't know if people do those anymore, like eating cinnamon. That's not necessary. Use what people give you. And the benefit of that is that it's more than storytelling, it's story building. You've started a story and let everybody build on it. Let everybody add their chapter because they may see it and go, oh man, they did this at my house. Look how cool this was. So even if your service isn't a cool thing, you can engage your clients and then they feel like they were a part of the journey for your business.
I was going to say, and then the next step to that is also point of view and working with influencers. So you can contract, and engage particular people depending on the product, service, or place, and create an experience for them, and then it's presented from their point of view. Oh, I went to Epic Waters Indoor Water Park. I had a lovely time. My kids, went down the slide. I did the flow rider, and they're posting all that content. And then you can put dollars behind it and make it travel further.
Any question, Clarence, this time?
I know an answer to his question.
Okay. Our third panelist, everyone.
I know, right? Chat GPT will give you a bunch of content. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's called Chat GPT. It'll create the content. And another piece of advice I would give for small businesses is get rid of the Gmail and have your business attached to it. And a lot of people don't do that. So that's something that we all need to, sorry.
It's all good. Okay, any other questions from people? We have 10 more minutes. Yes, we have a question over here.
Followed up. Free content ideas. I used to be a director of marketing for the Boy Scouts of America. Gary Vaynerchuk's got a good book. It's old. Jab, hook. So maybe, let's say you're in the restaurant business. Put out a couple of pictures of the dish. You don't have to hire the influencers if you don't have the budget. A picture of whatever kind of dish, 2 or 3 of those per day or every other day, and then you add the sale, Friday night sale or what have you. But to follow that up, those pictures, pin them on Pinterest and make sure it leads to your website, to your bar, to your restaurant, whatever. You can get a lot of freebies out there. So that's a quick idea.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we have a question.
Hi. You mentioned working with influencers earlier. Of course, that's kind of a new market. How do you find the influencers you want to work with? How do you negotiate with those?
I'm handing that to you.
Oh, yeah. So typically the ones that we work with are, I mean, it's as it relates to municipal contracts that we manage, and so I have a finite budget. Certainly you can find, stories in fashion where, they hire a Kardashian, it's $150,000 for a post, and, X million of people like it. Okay, I don't play in that world. But oftentimes, I'm following content, and it's like people, they become, they reveal themselves based on the research that I do. I can see who's commenting on things that are relevant to a client, and then I can reach out, and typically if they're established, they're going to have a media kit, they're going to have information on their following, and then I can look what other brands have they represented, and then it's personal experience. I've worked with influencers that I'll be there at X time, and I have a curated experience, and they don't show up, and it's like, okay, you're off my list, So, it is just, you do the same kind of research that you would do if you were going to place a media buy. You're looking at who they speak to and kind of what's the dollar ratio.
I'd say one of the big benefits in the influencer market, especially if you're looking at like local people, is it falls a little bit on you as the person looking for them, is you have to become part of the community too. So when you are out there on your Facebook, even if you aren't a poster, friend the community stakeholders so you can see what they're saying, because you'll slowly see who the 10, 20 people are that every post they have has 1,000 likes or 100, you know what I mean? They slowly curate because you're watching what they're saying. And you can differentiate the people that are community stakeholders, but they're not necessarily socially vocal, and then the people that love to put themselves out there, because you can go to them and they're going to be really reasonable. They may just want a discount or free tickets. It may not be a paid thing. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Crystal Dobson. I'm CEO of Cardiac Fit. We're a telehealth platform. I do have a question. We are in the process where we have different types of customers where we're offering the same services. So I'm struggling with how to market to all of these people. So we have the B2C, so the customers, and then we have the physicians, and then we're now working with corporations. So what's the best way to do this without creating a new brand for each one on your website? And obviously these particular customers have different pain points. So what is the easiest way to kind of create a marketing strategy for that?
From one point of view, you could actually have a landing page, like if you're this, enter here, if you're that, enter there, and then you have curated content that speaks to them, so I'm not reading a bunch of stuff that isn't relevant to me.
Yeah, I agree with that, having different sections. That was the first thing as you were talking. I thought about different customer profiles and where people can kind of self-select themselves and how they are best described on your page.
So on the front landing page of the website.
Mm-hmm. Like you could, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what your... Telehealth. Oh, health. Oh, okay, sure. So if it's physicians, click here, patients, click there, insurance group, click here. You segment, and the voice that you're communicating is going to be very different. Very academic for the physicians, be approachable for the customers or for the patients, because there's nothing worse than when you're kind of in a healthcare environment and you're like, okay, everything's running over here, like, talk to me, make this, I'm already anxious, we're talking about healthcare, make it easy for me.
I would say that one thing, I said this earlier, but the homepage of your website is the face of your company. It's what people see. So make sure there is some general, true to everybody content, like we're here to support, we're here to provide healthcare, we're here to be your immediate line to your needs, and then have your nav set up where it's easily, just like when you call CVS for a prescription, it's like if you are a doctor, press 1. If you were looking for the hours, just set up your navigation to where it's for customers, for businesses, for physicians.
So what you're saying is have information on a page, but then still have the option.
Just a little bit. You need something. Google, anybody in SEO in here would say, sorry, Brian, thank you, would tell you need something on your homepage so Google can be like, oh, this is real.
Okay, good. We're in the process of revamping everyone working with the website, so this is perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, we have the 5-minute warning from Brian, which means if you have questions, come to us afterwards. We are all going to go upstairs to hear from the lovely Rob Matwick, who's the Executive Vice President of Business Operations here for the Texas Rangers. However, I've got one question left for the two of you, which is, you've heard a lot of things, you met a lot of people today. If you could give one piece of advice to a small business in marketing, what is it? Beth, you're first.
Oh. Piece of advice. Okay.
You know what? I'll go first to make you feel better. How about that? My one piece of advice is you're a small business and you started it for a reason. You're passionate about something. You didn't just start it because you're like, I'm going to make money, because that is literally not how small businesses start, right? You gotta spend money to make money. So tell your story about you and how you ended up in this journey so people connect with you as a person and you're not just another business. They need to know who you are, why you're passionate about baking cakes, or how you ended up in roofing, because maybe it's a family story, maybe it's something happened to you so you wanted to go here. But if you can give a way for people to connect with you in any way, on your website, in person, in communications, on social media, that will go so much further than just, hey, here's a special. Give them something to connect to.
Okay, reframe your question again. It's
What is one piece of advice walking out of this room? If they remember nothing else, what do you want them to remember?
Okay, I have a policy of once a client, always a client. Sometimes they just go on hiatus. So as a business owner, you can't take it personally that sometimes businesses, their circumstances change. So we've done branding work for, clients in the local marketplace, and then they'll be like, oh, we've got this, Beth, pick a phrase, my daughter, my new son-in-law, they're going to be in charge of marketing, and thanks, we're good now. And then they put us on the sideline. And when that first happened the very first time, I was like, oh, I'm kind of salty about that. How do I get over that? Like, we did good work and we got moved along. So I had to get over that. That's a me thing. And I try to treat all clients as, they come and go, their business needs are flexible, but I'm always going to value them, and I'm always going to treat them like a client. And I have great stories of people who have gone away. Maybe their business was sold, private equity guys came in, they brought in a hired gun, whatever. And then literally years later, they'll call me back. And why did they call me back? Because I never let the relationship go. I still sent the Christmas cards. I'd still message them if I saw them. They were in the local market. I mean, just crazy cool stuff. I'll give you one example of that, real tangible. We did work for Montana Silversmiths. It's a Western jewelry manufacturer out of Columbus, Montana. Did work for them. They got bought and sold by some private equity guys. The marketing manager, we did a lot of work for her 12 years ago. She resurfaced and was like, hey, it's our 50th anniversary. You've always stayed connected, and you had no reason to stay connected. And I was like, well, I like the brand and I like you. We got rehired to do their 50th anniversary campaign. So cool. I've had so much fun on that account. And had I been salty because I got moved along, I would have never had that second opportunity. So once a client, always a client. Stay in the game.
And I would say no matter what phase you're in, always keep learning about your customer. I've talked to a lot of businesses and I've asked them, who you're serving, why they're buying from you, and they really don't have good answers to it. And oftentimes, what maybe people don't actually understand what their competitive advantage is. Just asking clients, hey, why did you pick us? Why'd you select us? Or what things maybe are you not so happy about? Keep learning. Always keep collecting information about your customers, whether you're in the early stages, whether you've been established, because we've seen how fast the environment changes. And so when the environment changes quickly, oftentimes customer needs change very quickly, and you'll be serving needs that are no longer relevant for the current environment without even realizing it. And so that'd be my main bit of advice. Keep learning about your customer and always create some sort of mechanism where you can get a nice flow of information in about customer thoughts.
Well, that was awesome. So tell your story. Once a client, always a client. And keep learning. Thank you to Beth Owens and Dr. Elten Briggs, everybody. We are so thankful you came to join us here in Arlington, and we're thankful to the governor's office for choosing this great city this year.